Well, let's go live. Holy cow. I'm trying to figure out how to play this game.
Pond balls, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hey, here we are. We're going live. Holy cow. Trying to figure out how to play this game. Gee whiz. I'm not sure where we are. Huh. I see Brian Burns. Holy cow. I'm so lost on this YouTube stuff. Hello, Jim Allen. Good to see you, buddy. Jeremy Day checking in. Woo, Brian Burns. Let's see here. Central North Cackalack, John Dyer. Clicking on how to learn more, although I don't want to. So, we're live. Let's talk about Dean Cutler. I see Dean. John, I don't know how to do this, buddy. But so here we go. We're going to just talk about what's going on, life under the ice. So here we are. We're in the middle of February, early February, and we have a lot of friends in the middle of Nebraska, Iowa, all the way up to Minnesota, Illinois. You guys have this thing called ice. So here in Texas, if we have ice, it's in a cup. It's like in a Yeti cup. Ice. With water in it. Where's Greg McMillan? Chris York. Hello, Chris. Jim Allen. Jim Allen likes Facebook Live better. I'm trying to learn how to play the game. So let's talk about what goes on under the ice. And Chris York has no ice. Jim Allen has ice. Brian Burns has ice. So I think where I want to go with this is when water begins to freeze, so let's talk about the physics of water. Water at 39 degrees is the heaviest it will ever be. You take a 1 gallon jug of water at 39 degrees and you weigh it. That's the heaviest water can possibly be. As water begins to warm up from that or chill from that, it expands. So when water hits 32 degrees, what happens to it? It freezes, right? So like in this Yeti cup, there's ice floating on top of the water. The same thing that happens in Nebraska, Texas, I don't care where you are. So when the water temperature hits 32 degrees, it starts to float, which means the water is less dense. So water at 39 degrees is the densest it can possibly be. So when the water warms from that or cools from that, the physics of water is pretty freaking cool. So I'm going to, Dean Cutler, Jeremy Day. What's up, Bob? Jim Allen I like Facebook Live better. Fishing Full. I have no idea who some of these people are. 10 inches of ice, first time as far as I know. So Jim Allen, there on your lake near Louisville, Kentucky, when you've got 10 inches of ice, you can actually walk out on it. So one of the questions people ask me is, what do fish do under the ice? Well, so warm water fish, their metabolism rate begins to slow down as the water temperature drops. But that doesn't mean they won't eat. So ice fishing is all about being able to catch fish under ice when the water temperature is cold. So yellow perch, bluegills, largemouth bass, bluegills, they still feed when the water temperature is cold. So under the ice, I got to speak at the Society of Lake Management Professionals a couple of weeks ago. And what I told those guys is if I lived in the northern tier states, I would totally be dialed in on managing lakes and ponds to create the very best ice fishing possible. So what that means is we got to have happy water. You guys know the drill on that. Happy water that's the basis of how these ponds and lakes work. If you don't have happy water, nothing else matters. So if we're managing some of the potholes in South Dakota, we got to be managing the way that the water manages its nutrient load. So that means aeration. So we got to be able to process nutrients. We got to be able to manage the fisheries. So it works out like this. So happy water means the water's got to move. It's got to process its wastes. It's got to be able to have the right alkalinity. It's got to have the right plankton bloom. So if we have ice on top of water, the water beneath it is going to be 39 or 40 degrees. Those fish are going to be thriving in that. They will be moving slowly, but they'll still bite. They'll still eat. They'll still be able to grow. Jim Allen, okay, I got you. Greg McMillan. So Greg is working with Heather and her dad, John, to be able to sequester phosphorus. So managing water means managing the nutrient load in water, which you've got to do most of the nutrient management in warm water to be able to set the stage for the winter time. So Greg McMillan is working with Heather and her dad, John, to be able to sequester phosphorus, which increases clarity, which improves productivity, and he's able to keep feeding his fish. All right, so hello, Bay Milton Burger, Otter Lake Meat. Hey, Bob from Northwest Illinois, Devin Bryan, 12 inches of ice. I get that. Danny Mack checking in from San Antonio, Bill Shrums of Oklahoma. 6 inches in Nebraska pushed out several large chunks of concrete onto the ice. So, okay, so you guys that have ice, one of my favorite things about northern tier ponds is you guys are able to go out on the ice and to be able to set things up where you can improve the habitat. So I've been talking to Andy Benson. I've talked to Andy Benson a lot with moss backfish habitat. So you guys know where I go on this stuff. Happy water, great habitat, the food chain, genetics, and the harvest plan. So everything starts with water. If the water's not happy, nothing else matters. So where I see Brian going is Brian Burns knows that if he doesn't have the happiest water on the planet, nothing else makes any difference. But when you have like 12 inches of ice and you go out there and set up, you can put Christmas trees, concrete blocks, the best habitat you can create. When the ice melts, you can grow great fish. 3 2,000-pound chunks. Sheesh. Brian, dude, if you can push 3 2,000-pound chunks of concrete onto the ice, how do you do that? Virgin Meyer, lots of creaking and moaning. I kind of get that. So the ice has a tendency to kind of want to break up. John Dyer, you need to help me out here, dude. So we're talking about ice. And this is kind of one of the worst winters we've had in a long time in terms of temperature. So I was talking with the guys at Midwest Lake Management earlier today, and one of the things they do is they go out and they take. They were able to go talk to the Home Depot, talk to Lowe's, and go get some of the Christmas trees that they have. And so they take those Christmas trees, they put them in 5-gallon buckets with a little bit of concrete, and they set them up in the ice. So when the ice thaws, that these Christmas trees can fall through the ice and create some of the best habitat that you can have. And so, when we're creating habitat, we're trying to create the best situation specifically for bait fish. So if we have bait fish that can congregate around some of these Christmas trees and things, then the density of habitat makes a huge difference. Trying to read through some of this. Otter Lake Mead, shoot, our water's so low, about 5 acres is out of the water. We're 7 feet low, so making habitat is easy right now. Make it easy to drag out onto the sandbars. You know what? When you got a chance to have low water like that, that's when you can really improve habitat. I'm getting ready to go speak to a group of people at the American Fisheries Society's Southern Division meeting in New Orleans here in about 3 or 4 weeks in March. There's going to be a lot of college students there. There's going to be some people in the public sector that are trying to manage private ponds and lakes, like where they do the trout stockings and, well, hell, take Plano, Texas, for example. They've got some small ponds and lakes in Plano, Texas. And Bay, you know what that's all about. So what do you do to take a small private pond or a public lake and pond where you can try to grow some fish where the kids could go out and catch fish? It's all about the habitat. You can't do a whole lot about the water in those places like that, but you can make sure they get the right kind of habitat. So John Dyer, how does prolonged winter affect ponds? Thanks, Puxatawny Phil. How does it make you more susceptible to otters? I talked to a guy today near Claymore, Texas, has a pond in Mena, Arkansas, and his number one issue is otters. Otters are probably the most important predators that we see today. Golly, probably not even 20 years ago, which is half my career ago, otters were not an issue. Well, until the state of Missouri, the state of Oklahoma, and the state of Texas started trying to promote the growth and the reproduction of otters in public waters. But otters don't have any. They don't have one ounce of respect for what goes on in the private waters. I remember, holy cow, Bob and Donna McFarland over near Sulphur Springs, Texas. I got a text from Bob, a few years ago. He says, "Oh my gosh, we saw some otters. They're so much fun. They swim on their backs. They're so much fun to watch." And I immediately texted him back. I said, "Shoot it. Shoot it. Shoot the otter." Well, oh my God, he was so offended by that. He texted me back. He said, "But they're so much fun to watch." I said, "Dude, wait." And I texted him back. I said, "Wait until a 5-pound bass that's 4 years old in your pond is laying on your dock with the guts chewed out. And then you tell me what you think." He texted me back. He says, "Donna loves the otters." Well, shit, it wasn't 3 weeks. I get a text back from Bob McFarland, and he said, "Donna shot that otter and the wife because they found a 6-pound bass with the guts chewed out laying up on their dock." Today, I use my grapple to grab a long pine tree as a pole to push things into the pond because it's filled up. It works pretty well. There you go. Mark Hicks from Central North Cackalack. Pond is stocked with copper-nosed bluegill. Should I expect a fish kill since we've been iced over? No, you should not expect a fish kill because you've been iced over. If your pond water is healthy, if you've been iced over for 3 or 4 weeks, that should not cause a fish kill. The fish kills are caused because when a pond is iced over and you've got an abundant amount of aquatic plants, and the aquatic plants are absorbing a gigantic amount of oxygen, that's when you should expect a fish kill. But Mark, I don't think you should have a fish kill. How warm does water need to be to put tilapia in this spring? Jeremy Day says 65 degrees. When the water temperature is 65 degrees, that's when you need to be putting tilapia in. Hello, Harrison Davis. Looking forward to you hanging out with us at the Institute of Higher Pondology coming up in May. We've still got 8 openings. So if you're coming to the Institute of Higher Pondology, we've got 8 slots still open. All the beds are filled at the West Haven Ranch, but there's still hotel rooms open. Dean Cutler says, my number one issue is otters as well in central Georgia. We have removed 7 over the past few minutes. What can I do? Keep removing otters. I mean, if you start seeing carcasses, then you know you've got otters, which is what Jeremy Day's asking. And you know what? Jim Allen's got it. He's nailed it here. Bones and scale scat. So Ron Krisman from Michigan. Hey, Bob, so I thought I set up my aeration on the pond correctly. On the edge in about 2 feet of water, what makes it about 15 feet, half circle at the edge. 5 deer came out for a drink tonight from the ice site. You know what? So, Ron, that's exactly what you need to do. So, Ron is just south of Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have this thing there called Winter. And he's got his aeration system set up in shallow water. And if the deer are coming up, if you've got an open area that's in shallow water, it's pretty good call. That's a good decision. Otter Lake Mead. So I thought I set up my aeration. Okay, so I got that. All right. We had otters years ago. I laid on the dock and called some over our way. Hubby then eliminated the problem. He still laughs that I could call him in. Now that's badass. What are the Titan bass, Pond Boss? Well, so Titan bass are those are some. So you know what? Let me talk about that. So over the years, let me just kind of give you a little bit of a history on that. 1986, 87, 88, through that span of time, American sport fish was born. So there were 2 biologists there, one from Florida, one from Alabama. And those guys decided they would try to create the very best cross between Florida strain and northern strain largemouth bass. So they called their fish, they trademarked it, the tiger bass. So those 2 guys kind of cornered the market. So the Titan bass showed up just a few years ago, and they have geneticists on board. So American sport fish with their tiger bass, they know that their crosses, and actually their pure strain Florida bass are like 97% pure strain Floridas. So they have like 3 to 5 of the markers that trophy bass need to be able to give them the chance to grow to be 8 pounds or bigger. So what the Titan bass guys did with Josh Sackmar was, who's a geneticist, was to begin to figure out what they had to do to be able to grow the biggest bass on the planet. So now the Titan bass and the Florida strain bass from that fish hatchery at Red Hills in Georgia, they have 98 point something percent pure strain Florida bass, but they've got up to 12 markers. Although there's nobody that can say that they have all 12 markers, but there are bass 8 pounds and larger have as many as 12 markers in order to be that size. So what's a little complicated about this is that Red Hills Titan bass, they know the 12 markers the fish need, but they also know that there's no bass that have all 12 markers. I'm reading this stuff here. Harrison Davis, I'm ready for the Institute. Harrison is coming to the next Institute of Higher Pondology. Chris York says, what's your favorite grass for a new dam? Well, Chris, this time of year, it's got to be ryegrass. But when you plant ryegrass, you need to water it, get it established, but you know that ryegrass is going to die. So you need to be following that up with, and my favorite grass is Bermuda. Jim Allen, our lake has some areas that didn't freeze over, even though the rest of the lake is frozen thick. Folks are speculating why. Springs, flow, geese keeping it open. Any thoughts? Geese do keep it open. So so here's the way that works. So when geese are swimming around in a circle, they're doing everything they can to keep the water open. So, I can't help but think the rest of that lake's going to freeze over unless the temperature doesn't allow it. If the temperature pushes it, it's going to freeze over. Greg McMillan, without having an insulation of ice, my water temperatures were 49 degrees 2 weeks ago. Last Wednesday, 39 degrees, and back to 48 today. Knowing that this fluctuation causes stress on fish, what depth of a pond in the south helps mitigate the stress? 6 feet. 6 feet mitigates the stress. Because so Greg, here's what's going on. I'm kind of reading down below this. Okay, so going back to Greg's, without having an insulation of ice, my water temperature were 49 degrees 2 weeks ago. Last Wednesday, 39 degrees. That's probably going to kill your thread fins. And back to 48 today. Knowing that this fluctuation causes stress on the fish, what depth of a pond in the south helps mitigate the stress? 6 feet. 6 feet mitigates the stress. Because when you get down underneath that temperature, knowing the physics of water, the water temperature at 39 degrees, the water is the densest it can be. So when you've got water that's 40, 41, 42, it has a tendency to sink. The water temperature cooler than that sits above it. So I'm going to tell you 6 feet is probably the number. 6 feet mitigates the stress this time of year. Does anyone raise mean-mouthed bass for stocking? Not on purpose. A mean-mouthed bass is a cross between a largemouth bass and a smallmouth bass. Nobody does that on purpose. I've seen it happen in nature. I've seen it happen by accident, but nobody does it on purpose. Here's Brent Rutan from here around Corsicana. Last year, I applied a little too much fluoridone, a little too late, to a significant invasion of water primrose. Had a fish killed. When's the earliest I should apply fluoridone? So if you're going to apply fluoridone, I'm going to say you probably should do that in early March. But I cannot tell you, I'm not confident that fluoridone caused a fish kill. So fluoridone is an enzyme that causes plant growth to it doesn't kill the plant. What it does is it arrests the plant's ability to photosynthesize, which causes it to not grow anymore. So it's not a poison, it's not a toxin, it's a way to create plants' ability to stop growing. Do fish feel pain? Do fish feel pain? They do not. The risk of PETA coming after me, which I don't give a shit about PETA coming after me. Fish do not feel pain. They can't. They don't have nerve endings. Nerve endings are what causes pain. So fish don't have nerve endings. They cannot feel pain. Now that doesn't mean that they don't know that something's wrong. So when you stick 240 volts onto them in an electrofishing survey, they go through tetany, which means that they turn up and you can be able to pick them up, but they don't feel pain like we feel pain. Fish do not feel that. So that allows us to put that 240 volts out there to collect fish, to weigh them, measure them, collect them, and put them back in the water. They don't feel any pain at all. Jeremy Day, I put pelletized lime in my grow-up pond. What is the big difference between pellets? There's really no difference between pelletized lime and granular lime. As long as you've got lime, which is calcium carbonate, then you're going to be able to increase the alkalinity in a pond. That's what you want, So I'm going to pause a minute here. Birddogit.com. Check out birddogit.com. If you've just bought some land and you're looking for some tax credits, check out birddogit.com. My son, Jonathan Lusk, started this company like 4.5 years ago. And he called me and says, "Hey, Dad, and he was in his early 40s at that point. And he says, I've got my boys, I got my daughter. I want to take them hunting. But, if I go book an outfitter, I got to book a year out. Or I got to have a hunting lease. Then I got to go take care of it, fill feeders. I got to have an RV out there. I got to, patch fences, deal with the landowner. I don't want to do any of that. Or I got to have a friend that's got a place I can hunt." So Jonathan came up with the idea of how could he work with landowners that need to sell a few animals and then, work with the hunters and create an opportunity, which he figured out. So now he's fine-tuned it to the point to where if you have bought land within the last couple of years and you're looking for some tax credits, he can help you with that. So go to birddogit.com. And if you want to talk straight to him, call me or text me, 903-814-7634. Text me. I will connect you with Jonathan. He'll help you with tax credits. Easy Docks of Texas. David Schneiderman. David's a good friend. I've known David 25 years. Purina Mills, best fish food on the planet. Texas Hunter Products. Love those guys. You know what? If you want to talk to them, let me know. I'll connect the dots. Jeremy Day says it was 97% calcium carbonate. That's exactly what you need. Scott in Beggs, Oklahoma. 8-acre new construction pond stocked with F1s in 2021. It's 2026, a good time to add some F1s and boost up. You know what? Yes, that is a good time to boost up your genetics. And you ought to give me a call. Let's talk about that. So, here we are 5 years later. You want to boost your genetics. Yeah, we need to talk about that, which is a good idea. Dean Cutler, you know what? I know the Edges really, really well. Ethan Edge, Keith Edge, and really the one that runs that company is their mother, Mama. Yep. Had some F1 oxbow bass stocked in my pond a few months ago. I'm considering tagging them. What are your thoughts? I love tagging. So here's my thoughts on tagging bass. Tagging bass does two things. Tagging bass allows you to track individual growth of the fish, and it also gives you the opportunity to track your fish numbers. So let's say, like in Bay Miltonberger's on here tonight, we have tagged, I think, 200 largemouth bass in Bay's Lake of 104 acres. We probably need to tag another 500 or 600 bass in his lake. And at that point, we can begin to track about how many fish that there are in his lake. So you can track the individual growth rates of the bass, but you can also begin to figure out just about how many bass are in, which begins to help you figure out how many fish you need to harvest from the lake. So Jim Allen says, any secret nuggets about bass nuggets yet? I don't know any secret nuggets other than if you track lengths and weights and you've got pit tags or even Floyd tags. At some point, after you've tagged enough fish, you can begin to track how many fish are there, and then should you do anything about it. Harrison Davis is asking, do successful largemouth bass pass down smart genes or genes that improve survival instinct? Well, I'll tell you this. Bass pass down aggressive genes or passive genes. There's been scientific studies that have proven beyond any reasonable doubt that aggressiveness is inheritable. So that's where guys like me kind of get in a little bit of a conundrum, because we have to tell people, you know what, go out, you got to cull some bass. So if you're culling them by hook and line, you're probably culling the most aggressive bass. So that also makes us come out of the other side of our mouths and say, you know what, maybe we should harvest some of these bass with electrofishing. Dean Cutler, Edges, great family. Absolutely true. Rosh Chapel. I know that. He retracted his message. How's the book coming? It's coming. The book, oh, holy cow. My book it will be delivered into my office tomorrow. So Leanne's going to send me a box of them day after tomorrow. So the book is done. It's printed. It's coming. Chris York, what's the best way to prevent unwanted upstream fish from migrating into my pond? There's no way to prevent unwanted fish from migrating into your pond. But and Chris, you know this. Here's the way this works. We stock the numbers of fish in your lake to overwhelm your lake. And you are going to work on this because the time is not far where we need to stock the numbers of fish in your lake so that the incoming fish are irrelevant. So what I like to do with a brand new lake is to stock the fish into it, to overwhelm it, to keep the unwanted fish from becoming dominant. And we're going to be able to do that. Jim Allen, okay, a little less oblique. Any news from Purina on the large nugget, larger? So I spent some time with Patrick Biggs, a decision maker at SLMP 2 weeks ago, and he's telling me we're this far away from the largemouth mass nugget production. So there's some issues going on with the producer or the manufacturer. They've got some issues that they're trying to overcome. And once they overcome that, we're going to get those nuggets back. Ross, hey boss, I follow a YouTube channel, Bama Bass. Everybody loves Bama Bass. All about pond management for big bass, and he puts tags in his bass. It shows the growth rates. Interesting channel. No, I did not help him with this. He did that on his own. Duckweed takes over our 200-acre lake by the end of the summer. Any ideas how to control it without tens of thousands of dollars? There's sewage plant, but you know what? I do not know a way of preventing duckweed. So here's the way duckweed works. And I'm going to wind this up because I've got something else I need to go do. Have you ever heard the story? Would you rather have a penny doubled every day for 30 days or $1 million? Take the penny doubled every day. That's duckweed. Duckweed is going to double every 48 hours. And so if you don't get it early in the spring, it's going to kick your butt. So on 200 acres, geez, kind of a hard way to deal with that. So you know what? I've got a lot of things I need to go handle, and I'm going to wrap it up right now. So I appreciate everybody hanging out with me, and I will be here next Tuesday night, but I'm going to wrap it up right now because I got something I got to go handle right now. So until next Tuesday night, adios.